Which brings me to my bust. We were left holding the bag with $6 million in receivables that was unpaid, and we had to pack it in.
That's today's guest, Tim Demetriou, describing his personal experience that fueled his drive to co-found Pencil, which is a new business in the FinTech sector. And in a nutshell, it is a platform that helps suppliers and distributors manage their trade accounts. Hi, Tony Hackett is my name, and I'm your host on the Startups Roundtable. And it was a pleasure to speak with Tim on this episode. And his generosity and openness will be apparent to you from the start. To get underway, I asked him to share a little on his background and the story behind Pencil.
Yeah, I guess I came from a bit of a different background around actually, starting a technology-based startup. So, my previous life, I did hospitality for a lot of years when I was a kid. And when I was about 25, I started a separate business in education and recruitment. The business was really successful, grew really fast, and we kind of went from zero to over 100 million turnover in about 3.5 years. But what goes up must come down, as you can imagine. So we leveraged our business off the back of some government assistance, and that just all went away one day. So I kind of found myself in late 2017, I was looking around for something to do, and then I bought a cafe. So decided I'd give my old flame a bit of a hug and a kiss, and so started the cafe. And when I actually started the cafe, what happened was I needed to sign up all the credit agreements. So there's about 20 odd agreements with all my suppliers. And it took me a full month to actually sign all those agreements and get all the forms back and all the rest of it. And that was where Pencil was born from. It was originally a credit application management system. So that's the kind of story about how Pencil got kicking and started. And then I guess the idea came from a real world problem that I had.
How did you then go from having the idea, understanding the problem and taking the step to try and solve the problem for other people?
Yeah, of course. So to try and get some technology built was probably the first starting point. So what I did was a guy I know by the name of Greg Armstrong, who's now my business partner. I caught up with him and called him up, and I said, "Hey mate, just come down to the cafe actually." And he came down to the cafe, and we had a chat through things. And I explained the problem to him. He understood it quite well, and he'd built a lot of platforms for a lot of large businesses, Holden, Aesop, really big Australian brands. So I knew he could build a platform that would scale, which is the only way that this would work. So technology had to get someone that understood it and understood the architecture of how it could work and had a team to actually go and build something. And then Greg came back to me the next day with architecture built, architecture mapped out and everything, and presented it to me. So I could tell he was keen to do it, which was fantastic. So then I went and spoke to a bunch of my suppliers from the cafe just to see, if this is something that they would use. Some said yes, some said no, and then we spent the next 3 or 4 months just spending time with the suppliers and really annoying them and, just trying to get as much free information as we could. And I made sure I paid my bills on time with those particular suppliers.
That's a nice little twist in the tail.
And then, absolutely. And then basically, I mean, we had enough information to say, okay, yeah, let's build something. So we went and built basically a really basic system, which was a way for me as a cafe or restaurant owner to make one application and then use the same application with all of my different suppliers and upload them in one click. So basically a data pass-through platform, you might call it. So that's how we started. The product's obviously come a long way since then, but yeah, that's how we got kicking off.
It's a great way of describing I think you've described your ideal customer and also how you started to validate your market. If you're looking at, wind the clock back maybe a decade ago versus now, I'm expecting that you looked into as a service type infrastructure. Could you talk about how you thought about the platform and how you would actually start small but be able to scale?
Yeah, of course. So I think with our business, the actual product roadmap really did outline itself pretty early in terms of the core infrastructure that we would have needed. So if you think about the product, it's heavy on database. So we knew we had to build on something that would have been suitable. So we chose Ruby as our language that we've built the platform on. Now, the flexibility of Ruby and the ability to develop fast was obviously the two key parts to it. So we chose that. Then we went and we built out our databases. So we thought, what are the different pieces of information we need? Then we started mapping all the information across all the different services that we might want to bolt on. So we knew we might bolt on things like finance, and we might bolt on invoice factoring, and just all these little bits and pieces that we could use the core data set from a business. So you think about an ASIC file, a business's ASIC file. It's going to have companies and directors and all the rest of it. It's going to have addresses and all the annoying information that is hard to get. So we wanted to build a credit form that had all that information in it that you would need to go and apply for your finance, or you need to go and apply for factoring. So you could just send it off, and in one click you could apply. And that was the core of how we wanted to build it. So we just built the database initially, and then built from the database up.
As you start to look at the customer requirements that were made up in your own mind, you start to validate. How do you then build in this continual feedback loop to continually serve your product development? You started with opinion and knowledge. How do you go beyond opinion and knowledge to make your decisions?
Yeah, look, it's really quite hard to make the shift. So you go from opinions at the start, your hypothesis, which is 60% wrong and 40% right, or 80-20, we're not sure yet. There's a problem though, so your problem tries to solve that. Now, then you get knowledge, and knowledge just took literally just sitting next to suppliers and listening and hearing them speak to their customers and seeing how they work and finding what the core problems were. They just keep coming up and up and up. And those problems were just the same old. It was a lack of communication. It was this thing takes too long. It was they haven't got enough time to call the customers that haven't paid yet. All these different things. Customer doesn't pay. Where's the contract? Something as simple as that, which kept being a massive problem. And had they got a personal guarantee? No. So there's a bunch of these little problems that kept coming up. So we had to find the fastest way home to make that. Then you look at data. So, once you've got knowledge that these are the problems, you try and create products that are going to resolve those problems. Often it's really hard to ask the supplier, what do you need? What do you think you need? Because from a technology standpoint, often they don't know what they need. They'll know when they see it. So you need to know the problem it's going to solve, but it's very, very difficult to ask them and them to give you a definitive answer on what you need to build, because the capabilities and they don't. So putting things in front of them, putting ideas in front of them and getting immediate feedback is quite handy. And then from graduating from knowledge, obviously you go directly into data. So we put tags on everything, and we see where people get up to on the forms, and where they leave forms is super important. So we know there's a blockage somewhere. So we're constantly iterating that. Secondary to that is we look at when people pay their bills. So and what is the biggest barrier to paying a bill? We're a payment gateway. We process quite a few payments now, and we've found there's certain times of the day in which people need to be notified that they've got overdue invoices. I.e., a tradie tends to pay their invoices after 4:30 at night, and a cafe owner tends to pay their invoices before 8 a.m. That's what the data tells us. So yeah.
You have I'm sure you have a range of customers that work a range of hours. How do you do your own time management? Because the easy thing would be to never turn off, but if you do that, there's like a bad personal result. How do you do that? I tend to think that the first option is it's the only way. So you can't turn off. There's anyone that thinks you can have work-life balance in a startup is kidding themselves, I think. If you have work-life balance, you're not taking it seriously enough. I believe you, Can you tell me then, the way you've described it, it's a very intimate relationship you have with your customers, and also you have a deep understanding of the market. I could imagine on any given day, there would be an enormous number of things that you could do, and areas that people would like you to take the product, take the service, new platforms coming on that you could leverage, new as a service offerings. How do you work out what not to do? How do you go through the decision processes?
So what you'll often get is, this is always a problem. That's the conversation. It'll be, this keeps happening and all the rest of it. So what you'll do is you'll investigate. Okay, well, how many times did it actually happen? Often it just happened once, and a customer's giving you feedback saying that this happens all the time. Now, it's not their fault. It's just this human nature. So we work through that first. So we see, okay, is it really a problem, or has it just happened once? Once we know that it's a problem, so it continues to happen over and over and over, and we need to build solutions for it, we will go out and have conversations. Now, we're still small enough to be able to call up every single one of my suppliers and just chat to them over the phone. They're always happy to give us time, and asking them each individually, getting them to validate for me that, yep, that's not a bad idea. We would use that. We wouldn't use that. You could possibly use that. Here's how we could use that, is really helpful. And then what we would do is we'd go and have the conversation with Greg, my business partner, who looks after all the tech. And I would say, this is what they want. What is our development over the next 4 to 6 weeks looking like? And then we prioritize. And you just have to continually reprioritize every day. So we sit there and we're quite agile in the way we work. We have our list of 1 to 10, the most important things that we need to do. So, for example, recently the number one thing has been to improve our Xero integration. So what we've been doing is keeping that at the top of our list. And then when the stuff has come that is super important, we'll clear that and we'll go and do that for 2 days, and then we'll revert back.
If somebody was just listening to the first few minutes of our conversation, they could be excused for thinking this could have happened any time. We're actually having this conversation at a quite an extraordinary time in our lives. And as we look at this with the coronavirus and your work with SMEs, small, medium businesses, could you just speak to the influence and the impact that's having on you, how you're thinking about your business and also your customers, and maybe think a little bit about or share a little bit about your thoughts about what the recovery could look like?
I think there's 2 ways you could look at it. I mean, you could look at it, which is how some people have looked at it, as in the sky's falling down. And for a lot of people, it is. That's the reality. I mean, there's no point sugarcoating anything. The reality is there's a lot of people that are going to be collateral damage from this. But the way that I would see them is that for us, it's a massive opportunity as a new business. So we've been only around for, with a working product in market for about just over a year. Now, that being the case, for us, it's a game of musical chairs. We find that what's going to happen now is that a lot of suppliers and customers are going to detach because of unpaid accounts. And the unpaid accounts out there are enormous. And don't let anyone tell you different. We're talking 75 to 80% of invoices are unpaid at the moment that are, under 30 days old, under 35 days old. That's got a massive flow-on effect for the relationships of each of these customers and suppliers. So for us, it's kind of a positive because we're a onboarding platform and collections platform. So for us, having the ability to make sense of and take advantage of the game of musical chairs, everyone's going to sit down and they're going to need somewhere to sit, which is with a particular supplier. So for us, being able to offer the suppliers a solution in this period actually aids them in the recovery and also aids our business in the recovery. So we look at it as for our business, the way we look at it is more of an opportunity than anything else. And I think your second question was around the recovery. Look, I think the Australian public and the global public, to be honest, are durable enough to be able to get kicking and get started again pretty quickly. I think it's going to have a massive effect long term for a lot of people, but there's going to be a lot of people make a lot of money during the recovery. I think that's the time when good businesses and good ideas that are focused on the solution and not focused on the problem are going to really go well.
I heard a phrase on a podcast. A VC firm were talking about innovators and established organisations, and what you've just described made me think about that. The point in my summarising it is, they said that an established organisation needs to be able to innovate faster than the innovator can sort out distribution. But I think what we're into now and what we're going to see for the number of years, or however long it might be, the large organisations are going to be so focused on locking down the core service, their core business, that the opportunity for people whose core business is innovation, they're not just going to be important, they're going to be essential. And the consumers and the large organisations alike are going to want you to be as successful as you want to be, in fact.
You're very right. I think the large organisations have had the luxury of being able to have multiple products across multiple areas because they thought they could vertically integrate and they thought they'd be good at everything within a certain parallel. And that's just not the case. I mean, the majority of businesses are good at what they do. Usually it's just one core thing, one core theme or one core product. So they're good at what they do. A business is very hard to be good at multiple things and be able to do multiple things really well. So completely agree.
Tim, when you think about your capabilities and you need to be a bit of a Swiss Army knife as my guess, what are the things that you're best at? And then how do you, as a co-founder, then work out how to supplement your skills and to have the same confidence to bring people into your team to execute on your vision?
Yeah, sure. So I guess in terms of what I've been able to do, the majority of my intel has been around strategy and around connection. So strategy, thinking about the customer, thinking about what they do and what their problems are, and just understanding more and more and more about their issues and what software they use and how they use it and what times of the day they use it and all that type of thing. So I'm obsessed with customer. Customer's everything. So, and then once you understand customer, you can, and I'm talking our customer's customer, that is. So thinking about what their problems are, and they are the retailers and the cafe owners and the tradies, right? Then I think about our customer, which is a supplier. So go up in the chain and then think about all their problems and then how you can marry up, making their life easier to talk to their customers. So they're kind of the core things. And then connection, being able to understand all the different key stakeholders in an industry. So for us, we've had to build a ecosystem around our platform. I think that as you understand the Xero ecosystem on one side, and then you've got MyOb with their ecosystem that's growing on another side, and Intuit, etc. Everything is built around the accounting platforms, which is it's the center of a business's universe. So for us, being able to navigate through those ecosystems and pick and choose who we would like to be working with and who we'd like to understand more about has been that's been a constant work in progress. But it's been an amazing educational experience as well. You never know everything.
Yeah, I believe you. How do you go about doing your business development?
Look, initially, what we do is I'll decide. You've got to decide who you want to talk to first. So we'll look at who we can talk to and who we want to talk to. For us, the starting point was to speak to accountants, bookkeepers, business advisors, and cloud integration businesses. So that was our core focus. So I thought, how do we speak to them? And you just got to go and look at the blueprint of what Xero's done around the accountants and bookkeepers. So that was a focus, and then just looking at all the different implementation partners from all of the different software products. So what were the products that we wanted to work alongside with? They were inventory and they were accounting. So we had to look at all the different implementation partners of inventory and accounting, and we focused on talking to them.
That simplifies the universe down very nicely. You have a lot that you do on a day. Could you take me through, I'm going to say typical, and I know in saying that there is no typical day for you, but what, can you take through a template of a day?
Yeah, for sure. So usually it's going to be a lot different than what it is today. But what I would usually do, and I can put into context for you now, is I'm not an early riser. I usually get up about 8:30, and I usually stay up until about 2 o'clock in the morning, working away. So I get up at 8:30, and I'll jump straight onto my phone, usually in bed, and just look at emails and I do a cull at the start of the day. So I try and delete everything that I don't need to worry about for the day. That's the first thing I do, and that's literally going through my phone and deleting emails that I don't need to respond to, deleting messages and that type of thing, just clearing it to try and understand. Okay, there's 6 things I got to do today. Then I look at my calendar and make sure that I've got all my appointments and any Zoom links that are missing or anything like that. So and then I call Greg. We talk about 19 times a day. And we just talk about everything basically with short, sharp conversations, 5 minutes each. But meaningful. We don't just talk shit. Basically, we actually talk about things that are going to be helpful. Then usually we're in an office with our salesperson Malcolm and our growth hacker, and I usually chat with them next, and we'll talk about, okay, what appointments have you got today? How did you go yesterday? Did you get any traction? Is there anything that I need to jump in on? I'll usually once a conversation gets to a certain point, I'll jump in and I'll join that conversation when I've got time, which is basically always. You can always make time for a second conversation with a potential customer, and then I'll just go meeting, and again another chat with Greg on the phone, then meeting, and usually meetings until 4ish, and then after that it's responding to everyone, and then doing things like pitch decks and doing things like at night time it's all pitch decks, it's one pages, it's investment reviews, it's all that type of thing.
What would your advice be for somebody else who is an innovator, an entrepreneur listening to this, and they were starting to think about, how do I go and find a mentor or mentors, and how would I think about startup boot camps and programs? What would be your advice and counsel on those fronts?
Be sure you want to do it. There's no shame in not doing what we're doing. Some people are really, really good workers within businesses. So, I would encourage someone to have a good, hard, deep think about that. For me, I don't really have the ability to do that. I don't really have a bone in my body that could go and work for someone. It's just not something I've done since I was in my early 20s. But for someone else, absolutely, I would encourage them to really have a deep think about if they want to do it. That's the first thing. The second thing to do is I would focus on, what do you need to make whatever you want to do come alive. Do you need a technology partner? Do you need, what type of partner do you need? And you've got to have a partner. If you think you can do this on your own, you're kidding yourself. You need a business partner or business partners, because you can't do everything unless you're, I don't know. Actually, no, you can't do anything. It doesn't matter everything. It doesn't matter who you are. The third thing is find out, unless you're experiencing something, don't make up problems. That's one of the big things. Don't just try and create a problem out of nowhere and expect that to be a real world problem for other people. So we always talk about the problem that you're trying to solve. Now, unless you've experienced something firsthand, it's very, very difficult to create something that's going to solve someone else's problem. So you really do need to understand that part of it deeply. So is there a requirement for your product in market, or is there a requirement in the area for your product? They're the 3 things I would do. And then as far as mentors are concerned, there's mentors everywhere. I think people often think they can't find things, and to be honest, they're not looking. Everything is available. Everything is visible. Just got to go to Google and then work your way through from there. And if you're in your entire network, if you don't know one person that is in a certain industry that you can ask for advice, you need to think about the first thing, which should be your network, rather than thinking about building a business.
That's tremendous pragmatic advice. In fact, as you're speaking, you're actually playing back. In fact, as you're speaking, you're playing back what you'd said at the start. And if I was to summarize it down, it was, you understood the market, you understood the problem, you tried to solve the problem, you solved it, you went to see if other people wanted the same problem solved, and then you turn to data. And you let data govern what it is that you do next, and if the problem really is one that delivers a business result. So there's, I guess, there's the risk of being caught up in the romance of the startup and getting underway, which I'm sure is an amazing thing.
There's no romance.
But the romance stops at some point, and it probably stops as soon as you start putting the data in that spreadsheet that you spoke about at the start.
The romance stops as soon as you start talking to customers, I think. So there's this idea of romance. I think the people that have got successful businesses know that there's no romance. They know that it's not fun and games. This is serious, and it really is life or death. Because if it doesn't work, you're fucked, and that's the reality.
I don't think we could have scripted a better point to draw a close to us today. That's honestly just been a fantastic conversation, Tim. The fact that you were able to take us through from idea to business, how you make decisions, how you decide what not to do, and to put that advice onto the podcast for us today, it's been terrific. It'd be great to be able to check back with you in a little while and have a follow-up conversation. But thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. Cheers.
I hope you enjoyed that chat with Tim as much as I did. Feel free to get in touch. Maybe you would like to provide feedback or even suggest a future guest. But that's it for today. Thank you and bye for now.